Okay, be honest. How many times have you read a book only to forget most of it by the time you're finished? This used to happen to me all the time. I would read business, marketing, and self-help books, and I wouldn't even be able to tell you the main points of the book once I finished it. So last year, I challenged myself to find out exactly why this was happening and how I could change it. After doing a ton of research, reading books about reading books, and even taking some note-taking courses online, I created a system with a few key habits that not only drastically improved my reading retention, but actually helped me learn more from what I read as well. I do also have a free Notion template, which I've included in the description box below, but I will explain and show you that later. So we already know that highlighting, taking notes, and annotating your book is a great way to study the material, much like what we used to do in school. But I wanted to create a system that goes beyond just note-taking so that I can actually improve the depth of my learning as well. According to the forgetting curve theory by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, the information that we learn actually gets lost exponentially over time if we don't attempt to retain it. What that really means is that if we don't actually try to learn and remember the things that we are reading, it's actually very natural for our brains to forget it. So how do we actually go about retaining the information that we've learned from books? My system that I created is called the Velma system. Shoutouts to Velma from the Scooby Gang for always being the most intelligent girl ever. The system is divided into two sections. The first section is dedicated to habits for when we actually are reading, and the second half is dedicated to after we finish reading. So let's start from when we're actually reading the book. The V in Velma stands for visualize. It's pretty natural for us to visualize our reading when we are reading fiction books, so why aren't we doing it with non-fiction books? Visualization is essentially the act of creating mental images and diagrams of the information that you are reading. It's why authors who write about really densely packed scientific topics will break up the text with tables, diagrams, and charts to help you learn the material in a clearer way. When our brains are able to create a visual image of the information that we are taking in, it actually helps us to retain it, but also recall it easier for when we need it. So as I'm going through nonfiction books, and for me personally, I read business, marketing, and self-help books the most, I try to picture exactly what the author is saying as I'm reading. Either verbatim, so if the author is trying to paint a picture or giving an example, I'll paint the scene in my head, or as some sort of a diagram that represents the information in a clear way. By doing that, I'm essentially creating these mental visual cues that will help me more easily trigger the information that I need when I need it. The E and L of Velma stands for explain and learn. And this section of my system is built on the idea of the protege effect, which is essentially your ability to take what you learn and teach it to someone else. As Roman philosopher Seneca says, while we teach, we learn. And it's so true, because as you are trying to take the information that you learn and formulate it into a way that's easy to explain and easy to understand for someone else, your brain is actually processing that information in a new way, and it makes it easier for you to retain and recall the information later on. This is actually one of the reasons I decided to start my book club series on YouTube, where I teach you what I learn from what I read, because as I'm trying to figure out all of the main and most important parts of the book that I should be relaying to you, it helps my brain create a stronger mental model as well, so I'm actually learning the material deeper as well. If you don't make YouTube videos and you don't want to write blogs about what you're reading, another way that I like to use as well is taking your notes app and clicking the little microphone icon at the bottom, which turns on the voice to text. After every chapter or after every new idea that gets introduced, I'll turn on the voice to text function and just summarize what I've learned. Don't take the text and say it verbatim. Don't just list out in bullet points. The key here is to not copy the text verbatim and actually think about how you would explain that text if you were relaying the information to someone else. Even though I do write book reports and I create YouTube videos around the books that I read, I still use the voice to text function because it allows me to quickly take notes about everything that I'm writing. I'll do this this chapter by chapter or section by section, and at the end of it, I will have a super comprehensive note of all of the most important points that I learned from the book. After I've finished the book, we get into the M in Velma, which stands for mapping, or specifically mind mapping. Going deeper into the science of remembering, you can also tap into this natural brain process called heuristic processing, which essentially helps to create shortcuts within your brain to not only pull up information, but use it to make decisions. In terms of memory specifically, heuristic processing actually helps us encode and recall information by simplifying complex theories and connecting them to knowledge that already exists. And the easiest way you can tap into this natural brain process is through mind mapping. Mind mapping essentially takes a topic and breaks it down into a web where you can see all of the related topics to that topic. You can do this in your head, which I do sometimes, but it is really helpful to break it down on paper or keep it in a doc. But you're going to use mind mapping to reorganize the relationship between different pieces of information to strengthen your recall abilities for that piece of information. So for example, I was recently reading Traction by Gino Wickman, and there's this section about finding the right people for your business. He has this equation that says core values plus people analyzer equals the right people. I also recently read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, which I created an entire video about, but in that book, he talks about how you have to prioritize will and people over resources. So as I was reading Traction and trying to take that new information and mind map it to something I already knew, I created a new equation which essentially says the right people equals core value plus people analyzer plus trust and will. Since I really enjoyed The Infinite Game and had already really deeply ingrained the information, it's now a lot easier for me to pull up the information that I learned from Traction because I connected the dots to the two books. All of these different habits will help you build stronger mental models to retain information, but the A in Velma is one of the most important, and the A stands for analysis. Now, this is where that Notion template comes into play. I actually write a book report for every single book that I read because as I'm writing the book report, my mind is again processing the information and structuring them in a way that's easy for me to understand and remember. In the explain and learn section earlier, I was telling you about how I use voice to text to quickly jot down notes as I'm reading. And oftentimes I'll actually do this directly within Notion in the notes and summary area. So as soon as I finish the book, I already have all of the notes to all the different key points or chapters. Then I'll actually scroll up the page and fill out the rest of my book report right away. I broke my book report down into several different questions, which to me helps me summarize the book super easily. The questions are, why did this book matter, or why did it interest me? Summarize the book in 3 sentences. What are the actionable takeaways that actually apply to me? And what were my top 5 favorite quotes from the book? By keeping all of your notes as well as those summary questions all within one database like Notion, it actually makes it super easy to search up a specific topic and help you recall information even quicker when you need it. If you read ebooks and you don't like taking notes and your phone doesn't have a reliable voice to text feature, I'd recommend checking out the app Readwise, which actually automatically syncs all of your ebook highlights and notes directly into a system like Notion. As a part of the analysis section, it's also really important to bring in the aspects of repetition and review as well. The analysis and the book report are setting the foundations to your knowledge, but the repetition and review is actually what's going to make it stick. Now, I know nobody wants to go back and just read through notes of books that they've made, but what I like to do is whenever I read something new that talks about a similar topic to a book that I've read, I'll pull up the note or the book report and just quickly read through it so that it makes it easier for me to make those mind map connections. Or if there's just a specific topic that really aligns with your life right now, whether that be business or therapy or vulnerability, I would look up those keywords so that I can reread the notes as well, because oftentimes connecting the book to a personal experience as well is another great mind mapping method that creates that mental connection. The last useful way that I like to get my repetitions in is every once in a while I'll go into into my book reports and pull out an interesting tidbit and send that to someone that I think would find it interesting as well. Not only is this helping you review the material, but it's also a fun and interesting way to stay connected with people that you care about. So if you have a friend who's really into business and you just met them, I would just type up business or search up little facts within my book database and send it to her and be like, hey, have you read this book? I read this super interesting part and it said XYZ, you should check it out. So that's how I've been remembering pretty much all of the important information from all of the books that I read over the last year. Even if you just apply one of the strategies from my Velma system, I think it's already going to drastically improve how you retain that information. But I think having the visualizing, the explaining and learning, the mind mapping, and the analyzing as an entire routine for when you're reading nonfiction books, it's really going to help you solidify all of the new information that you're taking in and help you recall it. If you enjoyed this video, go and check out my book club series where I teach you everything that I learn from everything that I read. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. And as always, I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!